The CEO's mother refused help from everyone, until a single dad whispered, "Let me try." The machines were screaming, and no one in that hospital room could make Eleanor Hayes stop crying long enough to breathe. 3 specialists had already walked out, shaking their heads. Her son, a billionaire CEO who could buy the entire hospital if he wanted to, stood helpless in the doorway, watching the one person he loved most in the world slip further away, not from her illness, but from a grief no medicine could touch. And then a nurse nobody had called for stepped quietly into the room and said 4 words that would change everything: "Let me try, ma'am." If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet power of ordinary people to change everything, hit that like button, drop a comment below, share this video with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Corner so you never miss a story like this one. Eleanor Hayes had been admitted 3 days earlier after a fall in her home, but everyone on the 4th floor knew her real wound wasn't in her hip. It was in her heart. Her husband of 41 years had passed only 2 months before, and since then Eleanor had refused every hand offered to her. She snapped at the physical therapists. She turned away the grief counselor the hospital sent. She wouldn't eat unless a tray was left in silence and picked up in silence. Her son, Richard Hayes, CEO of one of the largest logistics companies on the East Coast, had flown in from 3 different countries in the past week alone, canceling board meetings, missing his own daughter's recital, all to sit beside a mother who barely looked at him. Richard was a man used to solving problems with capital and control, but grief did not respond to either. He had hired the best specialists in the state. He had authorized round-the-clock private care. None of it mattered, because what his mother needed wasn't expertise. It was someone who understood what it meant to lose everything and still have to get up the next morning. That someone was Daniel Cole, a registered nurse on the evening shift, a single father raising his 6-year-old daughter alone after his wife died in a car accident 3 years earlier. Daniel wasn't assigned to Eleanor's room. He had simply noticed her, the way he noticed everyone who seemed to be disappearing quietly inside themselves, because he recognized that particular kind of disappearing. He remembered the nights he sat on his bathroom floor after his daughter fell asleep, unable to explain to a 6-year-old why her mother wasn't coming home. He remembered the well-meaning strangers who tried to fix his pain with schedules and casseroles and platitudes, and how none of it reached him, because grief doesn't want to be managed. It wants to be witnessed. So when Daniel walked past Eleanor's room that evening and heard the sound of her crying beneath the beeping monitors, and saw Richard standing frozen by the window with the particular exhaustion of a man who has run out of solutions, Daniel didn't think about protocol. He knocked softly, stepped inside, and asked if he could sit with her for a moment. Richard, too tired to argue, simply nodded. Daniel didn't bring a clipboard. He didn't bring statistics about grief stages or a script from a training manual. He pulled a chair beside the bed, and instead of asking Eleanor how she was feeling, he asked her to tell him about her husband, his name, how they met, what made her laugh about him even now. At first Eleanor refused to answer, turning her face toward the window the way she had with everyone else. But Daniel didn't leave. He simply waited, the way he had learned to wait through his own worst nights, and after several long minutes of silence, Eleanor finally whispered her husband's name, Thomas. And once that name was spoken aloud, something in the room shifted. For the next hour, Eleanor talked. She talked about the summer she met Thomas on a fishing dock in Maryland, about the year they nearly lost everything and rebuilt it from nothing, about the small rituals of a 41-year marriage that no one else in the world would ever understand the weight of. Daniel listened without interrupting, without trying to fix anything, simply nodding and occasionally sharing a small piece of his own story, how he still set 2 coffee cups out some mornings before remembering. Richard stood by the window the entire time, watching his mother speak more in that hour than she had in the 3 days since her admission, tears sliding silently down his own face, because he realized this stranger in scrubs had done something all his money and power never could. Over the following 2 weeks, Daniel made a point of visiting Eleanor during his breaks, even on days he wasn't assigned to her floor. He brought his daughter's crayon drawings to show her, and Eleanor, for the first time since Thomas's death, asked to keep one taped to her wall. Slowly, she began eating again. She began working with her physical therapist. She began, in small and fragile ways, choosing to live. Richard watched this transformation with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief, and one evening he found Daniel in the break room and asked him plainly why he had done it, why he had given so much of himself to a stranger who had given him nothing but resistance. Daniel simply said that everyone deserves someone to sit with them in the dark, because he knew what it cost to sit there alone. What Richard did next surprised the entire hospital. He didn't offer Daniel money, though he could have offered more than Daniel would earn in a decade. Instead, he asked Daniel what he actually needed. And Daniel, humbled and hesitant, admitted that finding reliable childcare on his shifting nurse's schedule had been the hardest part of raising his daughter alone. Within a month, Richard had funded a childcare program for hospital staff working non-traditional hours, starting with Daniel's daughter as its very first enrolled child. It wasn't charity. It was recognition, one father acknowledging another, one man who had everything honoring a man who had given the one thing money could never buy, his presence, freely and without condition. Eleanor Hayes was discharged 6 weeks later, walking on her own, laughing again, carrying with her a small stack of crayon drawings and a friendship that had saved her life in ways no specialist ever could. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need reminding that kindness still changes lives. Before we go, I want to ask you something. Please comment the word Daniel below if you believe that sometimes the smallest act of sitting with someone in their pain is the greatest gift we can give. Eleanor kept that crayon drawing taped to her wall for the rest of her life, a small reminder that healing rarely comes from those with the most power to give it, but often from those humble enough to simply say, "Let me try."